At 29, Daniel had what most people would call a decent life. Stable job, decent apartment, reliable car, enough income to cover bills and still have room to breathe. He was not rich, but he was not struggling either. And yet, almost every week, he felt behind. Behind in how he dressed, behind in what he owned, behind in how his life looked compared to everyone else. That feeling followed him everywhere. Open Instagram, someone had a better vacation. Open YouTube, someone had a better apartment. Walk through Target, suddenly his kitchen felt outdated. Scroll online for 5 minutes, and things that worked perfectly fine started feeling like evidence that he was falling behind. That feeling was not random. It was designed. This is one of the most expensive psychological traps in modern finance, and most people never realize they're inside it. Brands do not just sell products anymore. They sell emotional dissatisfaction. That is the real business model. They don't need you to be poor. They need you to feel poor relative to what they show you. That is how consumption now works in America. It is no longer built around need. It is built around perceived inadequacy. Daniel was not buying things because he needed them. He was buying relief from the feeling that he was behind. And that's the trick. Modern brands are not just competing for your money, they're competing to define what normal looks like in your mind. Because once they control your standard, they control your spending. That's why marketing today feels less like advertising and more like emotional manipulation. It is no longer just buy this, it's people like you should already have this. Better skin care means you're aging wrong without it. Better furniture means your home is less adult without it. Better clothes mean you look less successful without them. Better tech means you're already outdated. None of this is accidental. It's psychological positioning. The goal is not to convince you that a product is useful. The goal is to make your current life feel subtly insufficient without it. And that's where financial damage begins. Because once brands attach self-worth to consumption, spending stops feeling optional. It starts feeling corrective. Daniel thought he was making small lifestyle upgrades. In reality, he was paying to reduce manufactured insecurity. That's what most people are doing now without realizing it. They're not spending from need, they're spending from emotional discomfort that was deliberately created. And because the discomfort feels personal, most people never question where it came from. They assume the feeling is theirs. It is not. It was built for them. If you've ever felt like your life was falling behind 5 minutes after opening your phone, this is exactly where the trap starts. Make sure you like, subscribe, and join DollarNeck, because in the next part, we're breaking down the psychological tricks brands use to manufacture insecurity, and why so many smart people still overspend without realizing they were manipulated first. Daniel started noticing something once he paid attention. The feeling that he needed something rarely began with need. It began with exposure. He would not wake up wanting a new couch, better skincare, upgraded headphones, or a more expensive coffee setup. That desire usually appeared after he saw someone else using it, after an ad framed it as normal, or after content made his current version feel slightly inadequate. That is how the psychological trap works. Brands do not create urgency by proving you need more. They create urgency by making your current life feel subtly insufficient, and they do it with precision. The first trick is manufactured normal. This is the most powerful one because it does not feel like advertising. It feels like culture. Brands flood your feed with curated versions of everyday life, where everyone seems to own better things, live in cleaner spaces, dress better, travel better, and function at a higher standard than reality. The goal is simple: shift your baseline. Once a luxury starts feeling normal, your normal starts feeling like lack. That is where spending begins. The second trick is identity attachment. Brands no longer sell products as objects, they sell them as personality. Not a watch, discipline. Not a car, success. Not a skincare routine, self-respect. Not a laptop, ambition. This is what makes modern spending so dangerous. Once a product becomes attached to identity, buying stops feeling like consumption. It starts feeling like self-improvement.
And people will overspend very quickly when spending feels like becoming a better version of themselves. The third trick is emotional interruption. Brands know most spending decisions are not rational. They happen in emotional gaps: stress, boredom, insecurity, loneliness, exhaustion. That is why so much marketing is designed to appear when people are mentally vulnerable and most likely to spend impulsively. It is not just about targeting demographics anymore. It's about targeting emotional states. That is why smart people still overspend. They're not being outsmarted financially. They're being interrupted psychologically. Daniel realized most of his bad spending habits were not random failures in discipline. They were reactions to repeated emotional pressure he had mistaken for personal desire. That changed how he saw consumption completely. Because once you realize many of your wants were planted, spending starts looking less like choice and more like conditioning. And that's the real financial damage. Brands do not need you to be irresponsible. They just need you to keep you emotionally unsettled enough to stay consuming. If your standards keep moving, your spending never stops. If your identity keeps getting tied to what you buy, your insecurity stays profitable. That's the business model.
Daniel stopped trying to fix his spending habits first. He started by fixing what was shaping them, and that was the real shift. Because the fastest way to spend less is not just more discipline, it is less psychological manipulation. Most people try to solve overspending at the checkout stage, but by then, the decision was already influenced hours earlier by what they saw, compared, absorbed, and emotionally internalized. That is where control has to begin. Daniel started changing his environment before he changed his budget. He unfollowed accounts that made him feel behind. He stopped consuming content designed to manufacture aspiration as entertainment. He paid attention to what made him feel inadequate after seeing it. That one habit alone changed his spending more than any budget app ever had. Because once the emotional pressure dropped, the urge to fix himself with purchases started dropping too. That is the first real way to break the loop. Reduce exposure. Because the less often your standards are artificially reset, the easier it becomes to see your actual life clearly. The second shift was learning to separate desire from suggestion. Daniel started asking a simple question every time he wanted something. Did I want this before I saw it? That one question exposed almost everything. Most of the time, the answer was no. The urge was not original, it was planted. And once he saw that clearly, most impulse purchases lost their power fast. The third shift was redefining what wealth actually looked like. This is where most people stay trapped the longest. Brands train people to see wealth as visible consumption: better clothes, better home, better car, better aesthetic. But real financial strength is usually quieter than that: lower stress, less dependence, more margin, more freedom, more control. The more Daniel understood that, the less impressive visible consumption started to look. He realized many people did not look rich, they looked expensive, and those are not the same thing. That changed what he admired. He stopped chasing the appearance of stability and started valuing the structure of it. That is what finally broke the emotional hold. Because once you stop admiring consumption, it loses much of its power over you. That is the real escape, not becoming immune to marketing, becoming harder to manipulate because your standards are no longer rented from brands. Daniel still bought things, he still enjoyed nice things, but now he spent from preference, not psychological pressure. And that difference changes everything. Because spending is not what keeps people financially stuck. Spending to repair manufactured insecurity does. That is the real trap. And once you see it, you stop asking why it is so hard to feel financially satisfied. You realize satisfaction was the one thing the system was designed to keep unstable. If this changed how you think about spending, insecurity, and modern consumer culture.
If this video opened your eyes, make sure you subscribe Because what you learn today can save your future tomorrow.